For 8 years, she swept floors while people looked right past her. But what they didn't know, she once flew fighter jets for the military. Small airplane when a crisis hit the base. They had no choice but to put her in the cockpit. And what happened next left everyone speechless. Collision. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. She was just the janitor. Or so everyone thought. Get back to cleaning. That's all you're good at. The words echoed in her ears every time she walked down the corridor, mop in hand, head slightly bowed, pretending she didn't hear. For 8 long years, Mary Johnson moved like a shadow through the halls of Wright Field Air Force Base. Barely noticed, often dismissed, sometimes ridiculed that to most, she was just the janitor, the woman with the utility belt full of keys. The one who showed up before sunrise, pushing a squeaky cart loaded with cleaning supplies. She scrubbed toilets, mopped hangers, polished glass cases filled with metals she once risked her life for. No one knew that. No one asked. Young cadets walked past her like she was invisible. Some tossed jokes her way. Hey, Miss Clean, missed a spot. Watch your mop. Don't slip and sue the Air Force. She'd chuckle politely. But inside, she was remembering a time when she gave orders on this base, not took them. You see, Mary Johnson wasn't born to be a janitor. She was born to fly. Years earlier, Mary was a trailblazer. One of the very few black women to ever complete fighter pilot training in the U.S. Air Force. Her mind was sharp, her instincts faster than most of her peers, and her dedication unmatched. Her call sign? Storm. Because when Mary hit the sky, she was fast, fierce, and unstoppable. She trained on F-16s, flew combat drills like a natural, and earned the respect of even the toughest flight commanders. But no amount of skill or bravery could prepare her for what happened during a mission overseas. Mary and her co-pilot were flying a dangerous recon operation. Somewhere over hostile territory, the unthinkable happened. A critical system failure, followed by enemy fire. Mary survived. Her co-pilot didn't, though she returned to base alive. Something in her died with him. Command launched an investigation, but most of it stayed classified. Mary was cleared of wrongdoing, but the whispers followed her like smoke. She spiraled, not because of guilt from the brass, but guilt from herself. She blamed her instincts, her decisions. Her once steady hands shook. Her confidence vanished. So she disappeared. She left the skies, changed her name, and took the most anonymous job she could find at a base far from where anyone would remember her. She became the janitor. For 8 years, she faded into the background. Every morning, she cleaned the same training rooms where fresh pilots studied maps and ran simulations. She wiped down the very cockpits she once called home. Sometimes, she stood in front of the jets she used to fly, just for a moment, letting her fingers brush the cold metal. No one noticed. They didn't recognize her eyes. They didn't hear the calm authority in her voice when she gave directions during emergencies. Like when the base's power failed during a storm and she guided soldiers to safety without panic. They just thought she was lucky, or bossy, or maybe, at best, a smart janitor. No one asked about her past. No one wondered why she knew so much about jet hydraulics or engine systems. And Mary never offered. Not because she was ashamed, but because she believed her time had passed, until the day everything changed. That on a routine training day, a young pilot named Derek took off in a newly refitted fighter jet. Within minutes, something went wrong. Alarms blared. The base scrambled. Communications were garbled. And the only experienced pilot who could help was stuck miles away. Panic filled the air. Everyone was shouting. No one knew what to do. And that's when Mary stepped forward. At first, no one listened. You? What do you know? I was a fighter pilot, she said. They laughed. A few rolled their eyes. But then she began rattling off airframe specs, emergency maneuver codes, and fuel distribution ratios. All from memory. Fast. Accurate. Without blinking, the room went silent. Mary Johnson was no ordinary janitor. She was something much greater. A legend hiding in plain sight. And in that moment, there was no more hiding. The pilot who vanished without a trace, before the mop, before the faded overalls, before the forgotten name badge that read Mary J. She wore something very different, a flight suit stitched with her call sign, Storm. Years ago, Mary Johnson wasn't walking hallways with a bucket. She was blazing through the sky at Mach speed, slicing through clouds in an F-16, one of the most elite aircraft in the world. She wasn't just a good pilot. She was one of the best. Mary was among the very few black women to ever qualify as a fighter pilot in U.S. Air Force history, a role that demanded not just skill, but perfection under pressure. She was brilliant in the briefing room and deadly in the sky. Her reflexes were razor sharp, her memory photographic, and her reputation unshakable. Flight instructors said she had the instincts of a combat veteran before her second solo mission. Her squad mates trusted her like they trusted their own parachutes. But behind her growing fame, Mary carried a silent burden, being the first, the only, the face. Every move was watched, every mistake magnified. She wore the weight of her entire race and gender in that cockpit, even if no one said it out loud. And then came the mission that changed everything. It was supposed to be a recon op. Nothing too crazy. Fly in, gather intel, fly out. Mary was partnered with a co-pilot named Captain Ryan Blake. They'd trained together, flew dozens of drills, trusted each other like siblings. But that day, something went wrong. Somewhere deep over hostile airspace, an unexpected enemy signal jammed their systems. Suddenly, they were flying blind. No GPS, no radar, no radio. Just instincts and survival. Then it happened. A flash of heat. A sudden bang. Fire and alarms. One engine gone. Mary fought to stabilize the jet, but the damage was too severe. Blake made the call to eject first, but only one parachute opened. She circled for hours, hoping, searching, but he was gone. When she finally returned to base, Mary didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't even remove her helmet for almost an hour. When she did, her hands were trembling. The investigation came quickly. The official reports called it a classified malfunction under combat conditions. Mary wasn't blamed, not on paper, but the whispers began. Was it pilot error? Did she hesitate? Was she even ready to be in that seat? The media caught wind of the mission. Blake's family wanted answers. And Mary? She just wanted silence. She replayed that moment in her mind thousands of times. What if I turned 5 seconds earlier? What if I hit the backup system sooner? What if I told him to wait? The guilt clung to her like a second-skinned eye. In the months that followed, Mary became a ghost. She stopped showing up to training briefings. She turned down speaking invitations. She refused interviews, even as news anchors praised her as the heroic survivor. To her, it didn't feel like survival. It felt like failure. One night, she quietly submitted her resignation papers. No grand announcement. No farewell dinner. She just vanished, and no one knew where she went. But Mary had made a decision. She changed her name legally, dropping her full title, using just an abbreviated form, Mary J. She relocated to a small city in another state, far from reporters, old colleagues, or internet searches. And she took a job that no one would question, cleaning staff at a nearby military base. It was ironic. In a way, the same base where she had once trained cadets was now the one where she emptied their trash cans. She used to brief pilots on flight routes. Now she quietly swept the floors beneath their boots. The hangars looked the same. The jets still roared like thunder. But she was no longer Storm. She was invisible. Mary never bragged, never hinted at who she used to be. She didn't frame old photos or wear Air Force gear. She let them believe she was just another janitor with a quiet past. She didn't want salutes. She didn't want awards. She just wanted peace. But as we'll soon see, fate wasn't done with her, because no matter how far she ran from the sky had a way of calling her back. 8 years of silence. For nearly a decade, Mary Johnson walked through the halls of the same base where she once soared. Not as a commander, not as a leader, but as someone people barely noticed. Every morning, she showed up before sunrise, dressed in navy coveralls, pushing a cleaning cart across floors that once echoed with her boots as a fighter pilot. The same buildings where she once briefed teams before high-risk operations were now the places where she emptied trash bins, wiped down coffee stains, and quietly refilled paper towels. The difference was like day and night. And she lived in that night by choice. She cleaned hangars where jets slept, their wings stretched like steel eagles in the dark. Some of those aircraft were upgraded versions of the very models she used to fly. She knew their controls by heart, could take one apart in her mind. But she never let that show. She walked past training rooms where young pilots studied flight simulations. She would overhear them joking about pulling GS or bragging about how they nailed a barrel roll. They had no idea the quiet woman polishing the whiteboard had done all those things in real combat, not on a screen. And still, she said nothing. There were moments, flashes, where the old Mary stirred, like the time she noticed a young pilot incorrectly adjusting his oxygen mask before a drill. She instinctively stepped forward, wanting to correct him. But the moment he looked at her with that smug, dismissive glance, like she was just the help, she froze. "Don't worry, ma'am. I got this," he said with a smirk. She nodded politely and walked away till he didn't crash. But he passed out in the simulator minutes later. No one connected the dots. Mary kept cleaning. The staff called her quiet but efficient. Some joked that she must have been a librarian in a past life. Others said she was strange. She never spoke about family, hobbies, or even where she lived. She didn't mingle at the vending machines. She skipped every holiday party. They didn't know that Mary had once dodged missile lock-ons, pulled unconscious co-pilots out of burning cockpits, and landed jets on nearly invisible runways at night. They just saw someone wiping windows. Some of the younger cadets were cruel. They made jokes. "Bet she can't even drive, let alone fly. She probably got lost and wandered into the hangar." Others ignored her completely. Didn't say thank you when she cleared out overflowing bins from their offices. Didn't hold the door open when she was carrying supplies. But there were a few, just a few, who noticed something different. One airman once saw her staring at a flight schematic left open on a desk. He offered to explain it. She just smiled and nodded. Later, when no one was around, she quietly corrected 2 errors with a red marker and slipped away. They never figured out who did it. 8 years passed like this, day after day, mop after mop. Jet fuel in the air, orders on loudspeakers, salutes being given, none of them for her. She heard the sounds of engines roaring to life and sometimes stood still, eyes closed, as the vibrations echoed in her chest. Like a heartbeat she thought she'd buried. But she never spoke, not when pilots debated flight strategies she knew were flawed. Not when she overheard commanders struggling with weather patterns she used to navigate. Not even when one of the jets had a minor tech failure she could have diagnosed in seconds. Mary kept her silence. Because silence was safe. Silence meant no more mistakes. Silence meant no more blame. Until one day, silence wasn't an option anymore. It started like any other morning. She clocked in, grabbed her cleaning cart, headed toward the hangars. But before she could get halfway down the runway, an alarm blared across the base. The training flight had gone wrong, that a young pilot had taken off solo. And within minutes, his jet was in trouble. Systems failing, altitude dropping, panic over the radio. Mary's body reacted before her brain could. She dropped her mop and turned toward the comms room, the center of all operations. Technicians were scrambling, commanders shouting. No one could reach the pilot. The only senior aviator who could talk him down was off base, stuck in city traffic during a lockdown. No one knew what to do. Mary stepped forward. "I can help," she said. They barely looked at her. "Ma'am, this is for flight personnel only." "I am flight personnel," she replied. "I've logged more hours in the cockpit than anyone in this room." The air changed. No one spoke. A few chuckled nervously. One officer looked at her like she'd lost her mind. But then she began rattling off codes, protocols, and emergency maneuvers, faster than the lead techs could pull them up on screen. Their expressions turned from doubt to disbelief. It was the moment everything changed. The base emergency that changed everything. It was just another ordinary afternoon on base. Blue skies, engines humming in the hangars, and young pilots preparing for routine drills. Until everything unraveled. A young trainee named Lieutenant Carter had taken off for a solo flight, a standard part of his certification process. It was supposed to be simple: up, maneuver, down. But 14 minutes after takeoff, the base received a Mayday call. His voice crackled through the radio, panicked and sharp. Engine failure, altitude dropping, controls not responding, requesting immediate support. The control tower jolted to life. Lights flashed. Sirens sounded. Inside the command center, officers scrambled to stabilize communications. The screens lit up with Carter's rapidly falling trajectory. The jet was nosediving. A mechanical issue in the rudder system had locked the plane into a slow spiral. To make matters worse, the only certified senior flight commander on duty, the one authorized to guide emergencies, was stuck outside the base during a citywide traffic lockdown, and there wasn't enough time to bring in backup. Everyone looked around the room. There was no one else qualified. The young techs weren't trained for real-time crisis maneuvers. The instructors on base didn't have enough flight time logged in that specific model. Seconds were ticking. The jet was losing altitude fast. Carter's breathing was heavy over the comms. That's when Mary stepped forward. She had been standing near the back of the room, just another maintenance worker with a rag in her pocket and cleaning spray still in hand. She had come to wipe down the windows, but something in her face had shifted when the Mayday came in. Now, she walked toward the front of the room, calm, deliberate, eyes locked on the falling blip on the radar screen. "I can talk him down," she said. They blinked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. "Excuse me? You need a pilot." "I'm a pilot." One officer scoffed. "You're the janitor." Mary didn't flinch. "I'm also a fighter pilot." "Call sign, Storm." Certified on F-16s, F-18s, logged 3,700 flight hours, led 11 missions overseas, and I know that aircraft's manual by heart. Laughter broke out in the back of the room. One tech actually muttered, "This isn't a movie." But then Mary did something that froze them all. Without hesitation, she started reciting the emergency override sequence for the model Carter was flying, from memory. Then the rudder calibration procedure. Then the backup power surge trigger, step by step, word perfect. The room went silent. Her voice was calm, confident. Exactly what Carter needed to hear. She stepped to the mic. "Lieutenant Carter, this is Mary. You're flying a Model F training jet, serial 452ZX. I need you to listen to me, and only me. You have 90 seconds before you hit critical altitude." Carter, still gasping through the headset, answered with disbelief. "Wait. Who are you?" "I'm someone who knows how to fly that jet better than anyone else here. So unless you want to meet the ground face first, listen close." No one interrupted her now. She guided him through the auxiliary throttle reroute, a near-impossible maneuver to attempt midair. Her voice never shook. She talked him through shutting down the main engine, flipping the pressure control manually, then shifting fuel from the secondary tank. A trick she once used herself over hostile terrain years ago. The jet stabilized. Just barely. At 3,000 feet, that he was still in the air. Shaky, but alive. With Mary's help, Carter circled back toward base. She guided him through every second of the descent, adjusting altitude, checking fuel flow, timing his gear release point. 20 minutes after the Mayday, the jet landed, hard, but safely, on the main runway. When Carter emerged from the cockpit, soaked in sweat and trembling, the first words out of his mouth were, "Who the hell was that on the radio?" By then, Mary was already walking back toward the exit, but the room she left behind wasn't the same. Every eye was on her. Not in disbelief anymore, but in awe. No one could speak. Point one commander finally asked the question on everyone's mind. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Mary turned, gave the faintest smile, and said, "You never asked." And just like that, the janitor who had spent 8 years scrubbing floors had just saved a life and uncovered a secret no one could ignore anymore. The return to the sky. In respect, for the first time in 8 long years, Mary Johnson stepped into a place she thought she'd left behind forever. The cockpit. The flight suit fit snugly, but perfectly. Her name patch had been restitched overnight. Storm. Bold in all caps, just like before. And when she slid on the helmet, it was as if a switch flipped inside her. She wasn't the janitor anymore. She was the pilot. As the canopy sealed shut around her and the engine roared to life, a strange calm washed over her. Her fingers danced across the control panel, flipping switches, scanning the heads-up display, checking pressure gauges. Her muscle memory kicked in like she had never left. The others in the tower watched in stunned silence. Some were the same people who had once scoffed, mocked, and dismissed her. But now they watched her with wide eyes, like they were seeing a ghost or a legend come to life. Moments later, Mary was airborne. Up in the sky, the sun glinted off. her wings as she flew toward the coordinates. A young pilot, mid-training, had veered off course again after being cleared too early to fly solo following the recent panic. His anxiety was spiraling. He couldn't stabilize his aircraft. His voice was shaking on the radio. Mary caught up to him like a hawk moving through wind. She eased in beside his jet, wingtip to wingtip, and opened comms. "You're not alone, Lieutenant," she said in a voice smooth as steel. "We're going to get you home." He couldn't believe it. "Wait, it's you?" "The Janet." "No," she said calmly. "It's Storm." That single word shifted something inside him. Mary walked him through the situation. His fuel was low, stabilizer fins slightly jammed, but it was manageable. She explained how to balance the plane with limited pitch control, a maneuver most pilots only read about in manuals. But Mary didn't just read it. She had lived it. They flew together through the clouds, each minute calming the young pilot's hands. Her presence, her clarity, it gave him something the others couldn't. Confidence. She didn't yell. She didn't panic. She guided. And step by step, they made the descent. When the jets touched down on the runway, it wasn't perfect. The young pilot skidded a bit on landing, but he made it. Safe. Alive. Mary landed just after him, wheels kissing the tarmac like she'd been doing it every day for years. And when the canopy opened and she stepped out, the entire base froze. Officers came running. Trainees stared in shock. One of the youngest cadets whispered to another, "That's the janitor?" The reply came in a hushed voice. "No, that's a legend." The base commander approached her, a stern, no-nonsense man who had once passed her in hallways without a second glance. Now, he saluted her. Full, formal, no hesitation, and the rest followed. For the first time in years, Mary was seen, truly seen, for who she was, not who they assumed she had become. She didn't ask for praise. She didn't pose for photos. When a reporter asked for a statement the next day, all she said was, "I did what any pilot would do for another. That's what we're trained for." But the base couldn't ignore her anymore. Word of her story spread like wildfire. From whispered rumors in mess halls to full-blown admiration from new recruits. She became a symbol of quiet strength. A reminder that the greatest among us often walk unnoticed. Mary never asked for the spotlight. She never wanted parades, medals, or headlines. All she wanted was peace. But what she got was respect, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it in the most impossible moment. Not in a decorated office or on a red carpet, but in the skies above, with another pilot's life on the line. Today, there's a photo hanging inside the base's pilot hall that it's not of her flying, it's of her walking, flight suit zipped, helmet in hand, back turned to the camera, a quiet silhouette against the sunrise. Beneath it, a single quote: "Never underestimate the quiet ones." Because sometimes, the people we ignore the most turn out to be the ones who save us all. Bell. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because we bring you powerful, true stories of hidden heroes every week. Speech Balloon got someone in your life who's underestimated? Share this video with them. They might just be the quiet legend we all need. Movie camera, until next time, keep your eyes open. The greatest stories are often hiding in plain sight.